Are you a fan of spine-tingling stories about encounters with the legendary Bigfoot? Do you enjoy hearing from top experts in the Bigfoot field and exploring other bizarre mysteries? Then you don't want to miss out on the Bigfoot Society podcast. Join us for interviews with witnesses who have experienced the unexplainable in conversations with the foremost authorities on Bigfoot research. Click on the link in the show notes and join the Bigfoot Society community today. Get ready to experience the unexpected on the Bigfoot Society podcast. We'll see you there.
There'd be a lot of poop in my pants. I've seen a 6-foot alligator go swinging through the air and slam into a tree.
These guys are the scientists of the supernatural, lecturers leaving lessons for inquiring laymen. They are applying the scientific method to a world that baffles science. They are the cryptids of the corn.
But who else has big black wings and red eyes?
Batman.
Oh, Mothman.
Oh yeah, Mothman.
A great white shark was stolen.
Oh, someone stole a shark?
I got stuff for you you don't even know about.
She's a witch. She turned me into a newt.
Who knows? Anything could be possible.
It's really big. Abduction vibes.
Holy moly.
It sounds like you were abducted.
And it just stood up. I mean, it just like kept going and going. And she goes, what the?
Hello, and welcome back to Cryptids of the Corn podcast. I am the great and powerful mystery.
And I am still drunk from last night, Jay.
That's an understatement. Today we're joined by a couple amazing guests. One of my favorite podcasts. I listen to it all the time. It's amazing we get to talk to these guys. Jay, would you please introduce our guest?
We are joined today by the wonderful podcast Weird Crap on Australia.
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 No, A.
Oh, Australia.
We had a 20-minute conversation about this before recording.
It's a tough accent.
Say their names.
Matthew and Holly, welcome.
G'day,
Hi.
everybody.
Oh, lean into it.
G'day, mates. How's it all going over there in the US of good old A?
I mean, if you want us to talk broad Australian accents, we can definitely do that for you.
Oh, mate, we can totally do that, mate. No, that is not what Australians sound like.
Our
depending on the
generation
region.
is too Americanized
Wait,
to sound like
what
that.
do you mean? Nothing changed.
You're horrible. Sorry, he's mean when he's early.
Oh,
So
come
wait.
on. No, we love it.
I just before we do get into the body of the podcast here and have a chat about some stuff, thank you so much for having us on your show. It's always, in my opinion, the what's the term I'm looking for, Holly?
Highest honor.
It is absolutely to be invited onto a podcast, and thank you guys for having us on. First thing, I want to address something that you brought up during your Loch Ness series about the titular monster Loch Ness Nessie.
Attacking us already.
It's not an attack. You
I'm
asked
just
a
picking
question, and I think I can answer your question, actually, during
Yes.
that series. You asked how Australians felt about the death of Steve Irwin.
We went out and killed a dozen
yeah.
stingrays
Yeah.
afterwards, so that should tell you.
So there are a couple of things there. So first up, to understand Australians' reaction to Steve Irwin, you have to understand Australians. We will let you do what you want to do. It's kind of very similar to a Southern American attitude, you know. Go out, do your thing, whatever you do is your business. Now, we have that exact same approach to everyone else. The problem is that we also understand the consequences of your actions. So if you go outside to play around with a crocodile and it eats you, you're not going to get a lot of sympathy. You know, it's like, okay, you're mucking around with wildlife and it bit you.
Look, to be honest, a lot of Australians lost money when he didn't get eaten by a crocodile.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
true. A lot of betting
Sure.
agencies, didn't end up paying out. Now, when it came to Steve, though, while we were always expecting Steve to die by an animal, we also loved him to pieces. So Steve Irwin actually got a state funeral, and it was televised across the country. Our prime minister at the time, which is the equivalent to the American president, he gave a speech during that event. So that's how much Steve Irwin was beloved here. He was absolutely an Australian icon. We just expected that eventually something would get him. You know,
Right.
it's you know, that's just how it played out for us. Because the other side of it is that I think Australians had a little bit more access to Steve Irwin's content than what was sort of repackaged, re-edited, and sent out to the rest of the world. So you definitely saw him getting up and close to dangerous reptiles and dangerous snakes and things like that. One of the things about Australian crocodiles here is that, and being a marine biologist, you'll be able to correct me on this, but I believe our saltwater crocodiles and our general crocodiles are much bigger than American alligators.
Yeah, they are by a landslide.
I could have told you that.
You could have, but you know, this is all about, we've got American personalities to bounce off of now,
Yeah,
Holly.
but you
So
see, I'm usually your fact checker, so
this is true. So, you know, our attitude towards crocodiles is leave them the fuck alone. Oh, wait, sorry, can we swear on this podcast?
It'll be fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, I apologize. I'm going to rein it in as best I can. Another Australian cultural norm is we say the C word a lot. It's just part of our vernacular. I apologize if I do it. I apologize if I swear too much. I will do my best to rein it in.
It happens.
So-
Australians
it's okay.
complain that we
It's
swear
okay.
too much. So
Yeah, even our listeners are like, mate, look, I understand you're an Aussie, but Jesus, this is getting a bit rough. So I'm very bad. So I apologize for that.
Sounds
so
like my
yeah,
wife.
You know, when it comes to crocodiles, you just leave them alone. They're very big and they'll eat you. Steve liked to cuddle with them, you know. So we always
Right.
assumed that something was going to happen with Steve. The interesting thing about the legacy of Steve Irwin after the fact is you would be aware of his wife Terry Irwin.
Yes.
She got into bed, not literally, in business sense and in sort of a promotional sense, with a one of America's great grifters, and that was John Edwards from the TV series Crossing Over. And there's a whole chapter at the end of and I read Terry's book, My Steve, beautiful book, heartbreaking book. I'd recommend everyone check it out. But at the end of it, she does talk about how she's able to speak with Steve after the fact through the efforts of family friend. John Edwards. So it's an interesting story. It's a bit of a mixed bag, but I can say emphatically, yes, Australians love Steve. We always expected him to be eaten by a crocodile, but we did make sure that we sent him out in a proper way. So I hope, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
For what I ended up doing and stuff like that, you know, sorry, the Wi-Fi. We're going through a storm right now. Yeah, what I grew up and ended up doing, you know, he was a big influence in that. Literally, this whole room behind me is full of reptiles. Everything from big alligator snapping turtles to all kinds of stuff in there. And we do educational shows with him and stuff like that. I don't have any crocodilians, but, you know, it's just, he just meant something to a lot of us over here, which he does to you guys too. I'm not saying that. It's just cool to see somebody like that touched the globe.
Yeah.
he would be very happy that you don't have any crocodilians in that room.
But he'd also be very happy that he inspired people too. That was his whole goal. You know, he had this beautiful relationship with the natural world that I think as we progress forward, I think a lot of people forget about. Even in our own country, we constantly have to fight against the ideas of you go out into the beach, a shark eats you, therefore we cull 20 sharks. You know, that attitude is very prevalent here as well. But Steve always made sure to explain to people and explain to the world, this is their habitat, we're going into their habitat, and we need to respect them, protect them, leave them alone. So if you go swimming with a bunch of crocodiles and they eat you, that's not the crocodile's fault.
Right,
so,
it's just a crocodile. It's
exactly.
It's nature.
Yeah, exactly.
100% there with you. Like, it's bad here in the U.S., especially for sharks. It's we don't have a lot of shark attacks as far as any other country. I mean, you guys have a lot more than we do, and you would think there was 80 of them eating people a week with how people react.
It's the media.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it's the media. We will probably see here in Australia, and I think outside of Cape Town in South Africa, we probably cop it the worst. But we only see maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 shark attacks every season.
Or at least those are the ones that make it to the media.
Yeah, and typically those shark attacks don't involve great whites. They involve bull sharks. And,
Tiger sharks as well.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems is Australians also are partly responsible for that myth, because all of that beautiful marine footage that you see in Jaws, that was shot just off the coast of Queensland. That was shot by an Australian marine biologist, and then his entire life was built around trying to change people's perceptions, and it was, unfortunately for him, it was his fault, to a certain extent, and the film Jaws. I think people sort of saw that movie and got into their head that these beautiful animals, I've gone swimming with sharks, they're absolutely gorgeous. Not a great white yet. Holly said I'm not allowed to. So I haven't gone swimming with great whites, but, I've been swimming with nurse sharks and stuff like that, and they're gorgeous animals. And the problem with a movie like Jaws is it makes and I'm not shitting on that movie. Sorry, I swore again. I'm not crapping on that movie. I absolutely love Jaws. I'm a big Steven Spielberg fan. And it is a shame, though, in that movie, the creature is turned into a monster, and that monster is vengeful to the point when you get to Jaws 4, and I think the shark is now a serial killer going after the Brody family, if I recall that movie properly. And Michael Caine's in it for a bit, I think.
He's in a trench coat and everything.
Yeah. So, it's like every time Mrs. Brody looks over in the water, it's just a shark sort of like sitting just above, pointing its fin at her the whole time. In Cape Fear style, like Robert De Niro. So, yeah. It's also, and sorry, I've gone on a tear. I'll shut up very shortly and actually get into the show.
We do it all the time.
But it's like you point at your stuff and you're like, Steve Irwin inspired me, and that's now part of my living space, my office. And it's like, if you look behind me, it's the polar opposite, where it's very evident who has inspired me most of my life, as I have a full-size Batman costume behind me, And that is what we call, ladies and gentlemen, a cultural exchange.
Oh, important question. Who's your favorite Batman?
Michael Keaton.
Okay, fair. Good answer.
Yeah. So I grew up on Michael Keaton's Batman. Oh, okay, actually, to be fair, it'd be Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I correct you and go, there's Kevin Conroy right there.
Yes. So Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman in the Batman the Animated Series, and a lot of the stuff that we love about Batman comes from that animated series. So Harley Quinn was originally introduced in that animated series. The Mr. Freeze backstory about his frozen wife, that comes from the animated series, and he just had a beautiful way of doing Batman and Bruce Wayne's voice. But as far as live action, I'm always going to go back to Keaton, even though I really like Bale, and I really liked... to be fair, outside of Clooney, I think all of them have been quite amazing Batmans.
Even Val Kilmer?
Yeah, look... The interesting thing about Val Kilmer and what redeems his performance is the PTSD stuff in Batman Forever. So if you ignore Jim Carrey's crutch in a leotard and just like really focus in on Val Kilmer dealing with his PTSD, his performance is fine. It's everything else around him that's the problem. George Clooney, you just can't take that one back. There's no redeeming that one. And then, look, I think Ben Affleck's a great actor, and I don't mind his Batman because the suit does half the talking for the actor anyway. It's just, I don't... All my life, I just wanted to see Batman and Superman together on the big screen. I wanted to see that. I was so passionate about seeing that. And then we scored early tickets to it. I got to go to Sydney. I got to see it a week before it premiered. I got to see it on IMAX. Sydney has the biggest IMAX theater in the world. And afterwards, after I was so excited, I watched the movie and I walked out, and Holly's like, "So, did you like it?" And I'm like, "It's all right." And it was the most crushing... It was one of the most crushing experiences of my life, and
wasn't that good?
It's not, because they both have the same mother's name, and I was like, yep,
oh gosh,
yes they do.
That was my favorite memes that came out of it.
I mean, we're talking Batman versus Superman, right?
Yep, yes we are. Yep.
You know what? I'm gonna
mom dream was more than two.
I'm gonna say this out. I'm gonna say this finally. Admit it for the airwaves, whatever. Zack Snyder sucks.
He
You woke up in a bad mood.
Zack
I'm right.
Snyder
Look,
sucks.
he does. There's this weird cult that's now formed around him. This weird internet cult. And
why?
I don't. I kind of get it. I kind of get it, and I kind of don't. It's like his visuals are really spectacular. So it's like strip everything back. The way he presents film is really cool. It like looks cool. But the problem is that a film is not just visuals. You need a script.
No. Yeah.
And if you can't nail the script properly, so it's like, okay, you want Batman and Superman to meet each other. I don't like how geographically far apart Gotham City and Metropolis are, so let's make it New York City and New Jersey. All right, that's a bit cheap.
They're looking at each other.
They're literally, so it's like the argument is from Superman's perspective, I don't like what you do with criminals. You brand them, they then get murdered in prison. You're effectively a murderer by proxy. That's Superman's beef, right? But I'm like, Superman, why not just patrol all of Metropolis and Gotham? It's just a river in between. Batman is looking at Metropolis from a rooftop. If anyone is to blame for out-of-control crime in Gotham City, Superman, it's you. It's your fault. I know you really want to write the latest football and sports article, and I completely get that, but this is your fault. When you have a very fundamental broken part of the film before you even get started,
right.
It's not going to be great. And then the writer has to go, okay, so they're angry. We have their motivation locked in. Batman's worried that this nuclear weapon of a man is flying around the city and could jeopardize the world. He still has PTSD after watching Metropolis get absolutely decimated during their fight. He has beef. Superman's angry that he's killing people by proxy. So how do we bring them together? We could show that they're both heroic in their own way. We could show that they both experienced trauma. We could bring them together when Superman's mum is kidnapped. But what humanizes Superman for Batman is their mums have the same name. And that, I'm still upset.
Great writing.
You can tell I'm still upset.
Writing.
It's been like 6 years and I'm still angry. And I'll never get over it.
Do you know what did it for me for Zack Snyder?
Mm-hmm.
What movie did it? Was
Sucker Punch?
You ever seen? I never saw that. I never saw that one. Thank goodness, probably. But the movie Dawn of the Dead. You ever seen that?
Yes, I have. Yep.
So there's this one scene in that movie where Vin Rames, like the zombies are breaking in. It's this big cinematic performance, and Vin Rames turns around with this big shotgun. And it goes into slow motion, and he's like, "Hold on!" And it goes in slow motion. Cocks his gun, rolls cinematic, and then he points it right at the zombie, shoots his gun, and then this is all in slow motion, like Zack Snyder likes to do.
He loves it.
He shoots his gun, big, and makes big scene, and then he misses, and then it cuts back into full speed. He's like, "Run!" And they all run away.
Yep.
They did this whole scene. He shot his gun in slow mo, missed the freaking zombies, and then they all just run away.
Yeah.
That was awful.
Do you know how hard it is to miss with a shotgun?
It's awful. It's
a bullet made of little bullets that spread, and he's point blank. You should be able. I mean, I understand. Obviously, in Australia, another big cultural difference is, the way we look at guns and weapons. So Australians don't have as much experience because generally our weapon use involves sports people. It involves farmers as well. So I grew up in rural farm community, so I'm very used to seeing shotguns and just hunting rifles. Very similar to you guys over there as well. But obviously we have, a lot of licensing and that is involved in having a firearm. So I grew up around guns. And the funny thing is, even with our inexperience of guns, it's like we watch an American film and it's like, why are you pulling it back again? You've just now jammed your gun. Why are you messing with the shotgun? So we even understand enough to be like, okay, this is American this is American film industry gun activity, which is definitely not the same as someone actually discharging a weapon.
I can't remember what movie it was, but literally the guy cocked the shotgun 3 different times. Now it's empty.
Right.
He just emptied the whole thing.
You see,
I don't
those
know.
shells
It
going
was-
flying? Those are your bullets.
And I
Yeah.
always like pulling back the pistol when it's already ready to go and load it. It's called a semi-automatic pistol, so you don't have to keep cocking it. That's the whole point.
Pulling that hammer back.
You don't need to keep. Yeah.
I have a 2-stage handgun, and it's the same way. It's like, and I've seen people with my same handgun pull a hammer back. Like, just, people go out to the range. They don't really know what they're doing. It's like,
Come on,
it's
guys.
already there.
Hollywood knows how to use guns. Just ask Alex Baldwin.
Okay, calm down.
See, I was going to make that joke as well, and I was like, you know what?
I'll
People-
go there. I don't care.
We can also talk to Brandon Lee about
Screw that guy.
We don't like celebrities, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, poor old Brandon Lee. He pretty much the same sort of. Oh no, was with Alec Baldwin? It was actually loaded with a proper bullet, wasn't it? It wasn't just a bunch of shit. Because Brandon Lee was killed on. If people haven't seen the film, it's called The Crow. Go check it out. It's a wonderful film.
Yep.
Because Brandon Lee's death resulted in them trying to create a blank, essentially leaving a bunch of shit in the barrel. So when the next blank came through, it fired the remains of the previous blank in the barrel
wad.
into his head. Yeah. So he copped that in the head. But yeah, with Alec Baldwin, it was an actual bullet. Like they handed him a loaded gun, right?
He shot 2 people.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a squib. So he thought he had, and this is the main story, quote unquote. He thought he had a squibs gun, which I'm sure you guys know, but maybe people at home not. Squibs are the little things that when you shoot a gun and it pops on the person's chest and to make it look like they're being shot. So that's why I think he shot both times and didn't realize he shot anybody because it was supposed to.
No, well, it was he shot one time and shot through somebody and then hit another person.
Else.
Yeah.
But yeah. And it was like, but the real gun is like twice as heavy.
Yeah. I kind of find it amazing now with CGI because it's so much easier to just do a quick muzzle shot on most films. So, speaking of Batman vs. Superman, when he does have that scene in the apocalyptic future and he's shooting his gun off, if you look at those muzzle flashes, they're all CGI muzzle flashes, and it looks just as good. So I don't understand why Hollywood still has this penchant for using real firearms or using real blanks, because generally speaking, you can get away with CGI with most of this stuff.
Yeah, but then you have to remember to put the muzzle flash in the right way round.
Yeah, that is true too. There was a lovely CGI breakdown I watched the other day where the muzzle flashes in Batman vs. Superman, another complaint, are all backwards. So... So the big part of the muzzle flash is leaving the gun, and the little part of the it's all reversed. So yeah, it's the little things, man. It's the little things.
It is. It all just adds up to the one formula. It all adds up to Zack Snyder sucks.
He does. I'm very much looking forward to what James Gunn does with the DC universe, I have to say. Especially when he was like, my Batman is a fully established Batman, and we're going to introduce his son Damian Wayne as Robin. Damian is an assassin. He's a little nasty son of a bitch, and it's going to be Batman learning he has a son. And I'm like, I'm down for that. Like, that sounds just off the walls. I want to see that particular movie. It's also nice to see that people aren't afraid to use Robin. For a long time, wasn't Chris O'Donnell's fault, but for a long time, people were like, we can't use Robin. And then they make the parody Kick-Ass, and it's like, oh yeah, you can do Robin. You can absolutely do Robin. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I apologize for this Cryptid podcast turning into Matthew shits on about pop culture for an hour and a half.
It's okay. We
Yeah,
are famous for side tangents. There are side tangent T-shirts out there. So it's all good. Everybody's going to get what they normally get. Before we move on, though, I want you guys to tell everybody. We should have done it at the beginning, so it's my fault. Yep. I want you guys to tell everybody where they can find your stuff, a little bit about yourself, that kind of deal, if you would.
Holly, because you haven't said anything, maybe you should handle your introduction, and I'll add anything I feel that is necessary.
Oh, you're going to let me talk about something that's not Batman?
No. How do you feel about Batman, Holly?
I'm surrounded by him.
Batman.
Anyway, Weird Crap in Australia. We are a podcast series that talks about anything that's weird, that's crap, or that happened in Australia.
It's in the title.
We're a historical anthology podcast, so you can start anywhere in our back catalogue. We're just about to record episode 250, so there's a lot there you can go through and have a look at. We cover ghosts, monsters. I was going to say demons, but that was only once.
No, we did cover demons.
There was an exorcism. Yep. It's kind of a demon. True crime, political history, colonial history, basically anything. if I find it and I think it's interesting, I'll research it and I'll make Matthew talk about it.
Yeah, so, we also cover a lot of Australian pop culture as well. And you may be surprised at some of the things we cover. We've done a series on the Wiggles, for example. And people are like, why would you do a series on the Wiggles? And it's like, when you start looking into their history, the Wiggles started as a band called the Cockroaches. And one of their biggest gigs that they used to play at was settled above a brothel in Sydney.
When they were 16.
Oh, wow.
When they were 16. So legally they couldn't use those services, nor could they drink a beer, but they could definitely play at a gig in a brothel. And, Australian history is sort of really weird like that. And then, obviously, the Wiggles go on to be one of Australia's, and this is a fact that still blows my mind to the day. Between them and AC/DC, they hold generally the record for the most money earned by an Australian musical act in the world.
Those two acts constantly vie for the top place.
Yep. So 1 year will be AC/DC, then it's the Wiggles, and they just go back and forth
Every
all the
now
time.
and then, Kylie Minogue will jump in.
Yeah. And we like to talk about that sort of stuff. We just did our Mad Max series as well, where we go into the entire history of Mad Max and how that was created. And one of the reasons we wanted to do it is because it's really hard to find Australian content for Australians. We import a lot of American culture. We import a lot of American pop culture, especially. Our cinemas very rarely have Australian films, but we get all of the American releases. So when we were setting out to do this podcast, I really love Last Podcast on the Left. I'm sure you guys have heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Holly, wouldn't it be really nice if we could do something like that for Australians? I say, talk about serial killers, talk about cryptids, talk about UFO encounters. And Holly looked at me and said, no. And then the next day after she had a thought about it, because Holly is not a Last Podcast on the Left fan, she had to think about it, and she's like, well, how do you want to approach this? And that was pretty much the whole impetus for the show. And
that was just sort of 6 years ago. So
yeah. And since then we have expanded out. So, we started in this very thin corridor of essentially paranormal history, and then we go back to it all the time as well, but we expand it out because unfortunately for Australians, we're not getting abducted by UFOs nearly as often as Americans are. So we had to sort of expand out the show a little bit further and a little bit further to incorporate some of that fun pop culture stuff.
Not only have we almost run out of aliens, we've almost run out of monsters as well, so I have to try and find some new cryptids buried somewhere in the outback soon.
Yeah. And so, yeah, if people want to find the show and they want to find us and my musings on Batman, type in Weird Crap in Australia into any social media. If you really want to hear my thoughts on pop culture, head to our Twitter account at Weird Crap in AusAUS. But whatever podcatcher app you enjoy, you'll find the podcast on. So that's how people can find us. And yeah, that was the origin for the show. Now, Holly has a degree that had a sub-focus on historical site management, Holly?
Cultural heritage management.
Oh, God, I always screw that up, God damn it. So she had the research background, and I don't think without Holly's research background, it wouldn't be nearly as entertaining.
I used one of my major assignments as the basis of one of our episodes, actually, the Fisher's Ghost episodes.
And I think you've even looked at actually using our podcast for university credit. Is that right?
Yeah, I've looked at that too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that is what we've done. We've done nearly... What did we release this week? Episode 250?
It's literally on the board behind you, but we will be recording...
245.
We'll be recording episode 250 this week.
So yeah, and... yeah, we just cover everything Australia. So we like to also buck the idea of who Australians are and what we are. I think a lot of people just think we're Crocodile Dundee, and that's just
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah. Now we love those movies too. Like we're not upset with that cultural icon, but we're not going out wrestling crocodiles all the time. Only on the weekends.
And we haven't punched a kangaroo since 1938.
But some of the stuff holds up. So, if you like, we actually did a breakdown of this when we did the classic Simpsons episode. We did it as one of our Christmas specials where we're like, okay, let's grab the fact from fiction and let's sort of like break this all apart. So there are a lot of places in Australia where it is a really built up area. We live in Australia's capital, which is called Canberra. That's where our Parliament House is, similar to the White House or the Senate in America, and it's a very small city, though. It's only about 4,000 people. The architecture, 400,000 people. Sorry, Holly. The architecture is actually very similar to Washington. So it actually looks very similar. It was used by Liam Neeson in an action film about 2.5 years ago. He was here filming some of that, and it was a stand-in for Washington. So that gives you an idea of what it looks like where we live. But go for a little drive, go 30 minutes outside of Canberra, and you're straight back into the bushland. Yeah, go over to that hill, and you're straight back into bushland. I go in and out of Canberra every day for work, and as you're driving, it takes me about 25 minutes to drive home, and I'll see about 2 kangaroos, 1 wombat, a fox. It's basically a Beatrix Potter cartoon. And then I'll see a ton of rabbits, and that's me going back and forth every day. So some of the stuff holds up. But a lot of it doesn't. I think you would be shocked if you guys ever decide to come over here, just how Americanized Australia is as well.
I believe it.
I can see it. And it's kind of funny how you guys were talking. It's like we have a lot of friends and fans in like England, UK, stuff like that. Sweden. We have a lot in Sweden. They were surprised we didn't talk like we were from Louisiana.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it comes from only I think it comes from 2 things, like just incepting pop culture and just meeting American tourists. You'll be walking around Melbourne and immediately you're going to have if you are in a touristy area, you're going to have someone be like, "Oh, Patty, can you believe we're here in Melbourne? What are all these lovely Aussies doing? They're just fantastic people." And they'll be like, "Where do we find those kangaroos that you ride on to work?" And when you're copying that sort of thing all the time, it creates a stereotype. But yeah, we all have stereotypes. All of us have.
You're great at that. I enjoyed that.
Did you
like talking to somebody from Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Holly always tells me that my American. Well, you tell me in general, Holly, that my American accents are way off, but. It's like, we can do the Matthew McConaughey as well. They're like, all right.
Just because you copy a line
that one you just said a second ago sounds like you were from upper state Pennsylvania.
Well, I'd like to say thank you so much for your endorsement of my wonderful American accent.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it's great.
He sounds like he's from Lake Erie, like up in the rich suburbs.
Yeah.
I like going to Lake Erie on the weekend for a lot of fishing.
Walleye fishing.
Oh my gosh, he sounds like it.
Yeah, please save your walleye cheeks for me. I will buy them off you.
Save your walleye cheeks for me. I will buy them off you for 10 of your American dollars.
That's gotta be on the soundboard.
That is, I think it's not a well-known fact. An American delicacy is walleye cheeks.
Oh yeah, the cheeks out of these fish.
Yeah. Oh man, these fish, their cheeks are just like, it's so good. It's freshwater scallops basically.
Right, and they just take it. See, Holly's a butcher as well by trade.
Oh,
so
okay.
yes.
So I'm really good for the true crime murders.
Yeah. So we did an episode on a woman called Catherine Knight. Now, the long and short of it is, Catherine had a bit of an episode, and she ate her fiance or de facto partner.
She cooked him.
She definitely ate bits of him, Holly.
And cooked him.
Right?
Didn't she make a curtain?
She did. She made a curtain.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I
when
I listened to that on you guys'.
Yeah, so the poor police officer, he walks in the door and he's like, "What's this weird wet curtain slapping me in the face?"
Wet curtain.
Oh my god! And it's it's a perfectly flayed skin, and I'm sitting there and Holly's
flesh.
Yeah, and Holly and her both have red hair. They both had a lot of experience in the butchery and meat industry. And Holly's just like, "And this is how you would do it, and this is how you cut it, and this is how you do this, and this." And I'm staring at my beautiful.
I can do it for you.
And I'm staring at my beautiful wife, going, "Fuck." So I'm even on our wedding night, I said to our reception, I go, "Look, in my lovely speech that I prepared, I was like, I will look after Holly, I will love her, I will respect her, all the good husband things you do." And then I added, because if I don't, I'm fucking sausages.
I'm dead.
Yeah, I'm absolutely dead. So yeah, I didn't answer your question about Crocodile Dundee. We do like Crocodile Dundee. It's not an accurate representation of us. but we do enjoy Paul Hogan. Paul Hogan, we've done
he's
an
great.
episode on him as well. He used to paint the Sydney Harbour Bridge. That was his first job. So
Cool.
he would start from one end of the Sydney Harbour Bridge and he would go all the way across. Once he got to the end, they would then turn around and do it all over again.
For all of our international listeners, that's a very small bridge, right?
Oh, it's the biggest bridge you're ever going to find. Actually, I think it's relatively small compared to most American bridges, isn't it, Holly?
It's about half the size of the Golden Gate Bridge, but don't quote me on that.
That's
Yeah.
still massive.
Still big,
That's
yeah.
still.
Yeah.
I
Hey,
think they do this.
you know, you may have beautiful architecture, right? But we
do?
have the biggest rock in the world, okay? It's a big rock. It's out in the desert.
And
no
it
one has a
changes colour.
rock as big as our rock. That's our
Where do
claim
you
to
think
fame.
we have beautiful architecture?
Well, I mean, you've got... Actually, I was going to say the Statue of Liberty, but that was French.
Yeah, the French
Right.
built that.
Or the big arch.
Yeah,
You
the more
know.
you dig into it, our screen is sucks.
After
Especially-
Chicago
Yeah.
burnt down the first time, nothing's really been built pretty.
Right,
See,
yeah.
I
all-
guess I was trying to be nice.
It's okay. You don't have
Yeah.
to be.
Look,
We're aware. We're
your
self-aware.
plantation houses, the history is kind of off, but I love the look of them.
Yeah, there you go.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
I will
You know.
say some of those southern plantation houses, like Louisiana, Georgia, and stuff like that, with their awful, awful history, are really pretty.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, come for the view, stay for the horrific tragedies that occurred here.
As long as you're fine with a lot of black people's ghosts, it's a good place.
Well, I mean, that's speaking of what you guys do. I mean, have you covered the plantation ghosts and things like that yet? Have you got a famous example?
Not really. We had Mark Muncy on a couple. It's not out yet. The episode's not out yet, but he talked about a couple. He's an author here in the U.S. that kind of travels to these locations and does that kind of stuff.
I did a ghost hunt once in southern Ohio about it was this plantation house where it was an underground railroad, like, you know, a safe house, and there was supposedly ghost stories that happened there. We did a ghost hunt one night and stayed all night. Didn't really experience anything, but I did light my beard on fire by accident.
I
Was
do
it
got a
you
story
or
for
was it
them.
a ghost?
That's where you go, the ghost did it. You always say the ghost did it if you accidentally set your beer on fire.
Yeah, too bad it was caught on film and I had a lighter on my face. I was trying to be funny and like light my face up in the dark,
So
and I lit my beard on fire.
I got a good story for you guys.
Go for it.
Because you guys just did stuff about the labor unions and stuff in Australia.
Yes. And just to qualify too, our labour unions are very different as well.
Yes.
Less organised crime, some organised crime, just less.
It really depends on what labor union you pick over here, but I agree.
Yep.
I won't name any because we have them come through the town every once in a while.
I heard you were talking about me on your podcast.
They're from New England, so they have you can always tell when they're here in the Midwest. Famous. So we used to have migrant workers, which are basically they were basically Mexican slaves. So migrant workers would only get paid enough in this area of the Midwest and Ohio, enough to make it to the next farm to do harvest by hand. So they were paid, quote unquote, workers, but they were literally just paid enough to make it to the next farm.
Right.
So we had carrots, and our part of Ohio is right on the edge of what's called the Black Swamp. It's this gigantic, and I mean massive wetland that was drained. Campbell's, I don't know if you guys have Campbell's over there, like Campbell's soup.
Yeah.
We are
Almost-
do we have Campbell's actually in the stores, Holly? I think
Yeah,
we do. Yeah.
So almost all the carrots come from Ohio for Campbell's.
Okay. Right.
Literally right down the road from us.
Mhm.
So when I don't know if you guys ever seen how they store tubers and stuff, so root vegetables, but they build. You've seen grain silos, but they build those same things underground. So you still have this
Right.
gigantic tall shaft, but it's all like the top of it's just the surface level. So these
We call them a grower in Australia, not
Okay.
a shower.
a grower, not a shower. So these
So-
no, it's not made me laugh.
But
That's so
I'm gonna
funny.
get divorced
all
here very
good.
shortly.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, it was really like these migrant workers and some of the white people that work in there were, you know, they had the famous stores where they'd only pay you in money you could use at their own store.
Right. Yep. So you're keeping slaves basically.
So the labor union started here in Hardin County, Ohio, for the U.S. It's a really little unknown thing, but there's a little plaque. You can go see one of these spots. This town's called Old McGuffey's, where these giant bloody fights started. They actually pulled the guy out of his house and killed him that was running the camp.
Right.
So it's this big nasty thing. It was like mid 1850s.
Fun history.
Yeah, so it was all the time. But my great grandmother, she died at 101, and she was telling us stories that she would hear about it. Anyways, it's super haunted for obvious reasons. Sorry, Wi-Fi dropped. Super haunted. So my brothers, there are constant people seeing ghosts, all kinds of stuff there. My brothers went, and it was kind of. I'm the oldest. I don't like haunting stuff because personal experiences, so I just don't deal with it. They wanted to go see and prove, be boys and go prove that they're big and tough. So they walked down 6 stories to go into the ground. They open this giant submarine-looking door to get into the grain silo, this root storage. They open it up, and it just reeks. And they look up, 30 foot off is a deer. It doesn't have any organs inside of it anymore. Like, it's fresh killed, though, but it's all the guts been ripped out. And it's wedged in by its antlers, about 30 foot off the ground. There's no way to get in from the top. There's only one door into this place. And there's all kinds of satanic stuff that happens over there. My aunt my dad's aunt actually was killed over there in a ritual by a guy.
Jesus.
And we have the newspaper articles for that and stuff like that. So there's your famous plantation haunting for you. It's a bad area.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever been to somewhere that you can feel the energy.
I've done some of our more infamous ghost tours here in Australia. So there were 2 that I've done because my mum loved the X-Files. And a lot of my love of horror directly comes from that. We got the X-Files pretty much as soon as you guys did. We had, back in my day, ladies and gentlemen, I had 4 television channels, okay? I had 4. All these millennial, I'm a what they refer to now, quote unquote, as an elder millennial. I'm 35, so I was born 1988. And, everyone's spoiled now. It's like, oh, I can watch my show whenever I want. I can watch every single season of it. I didn't. I had to sit through Baywatch to get to one episode of the X-Files once a week. And then when I was a teenager, and then it wasn't such a slog to watch Baywatch anymore. So my mum absolutely loved horror films, and Holly's mother did as well. So I think my love of the paranormal is definitely influenced by, Fox and Mulder. And my mum, anytime there was an opportunity to go to a ghost tour, we would do it. What did I say, Holly?
Fox and Mulder.
I meant to say Fox and Scully.
There you go.
Also Scully, very formative years, those years. So my mum would always be like, let's sign up for this ghost tour. So we did one which is down in the Dubbo jail. Dubbo is a very small city. It does have quite a large zoo, though. It's the Dubbo Plains Zoo, which is massive.
Western Plains Zoo.
Well, it's in Dubbo. It's in Dubbo, Holly. At any rate, it's big enough that they can actually do proper grazing. So, you have like herds of giraffe and rhino and things like that. So they have an infamous jail, one of the oldest in the world. And, one of the oldest in Australia. Australia is very young as well. I don't think people quite realise just how young it is. But where do we fit in the historical timeline, Holly?
245 years.
Yeah. So to put it into context,
what did she say?
People being here.
Sorry, can you say that again, Holly?
I said 245 years of white people being here, a lot longer than that with everyone else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So our First Nations culture could now very well be dated back to 60,000 years. So we're Australian First Nations people are the oldest living culture on the planet right now.
Yep.
And recently they actually dug up a couple of fossils which could indicate that they're even older than 40,000 years. So we're just sort of waiting to see what comes of that. But as far as our history goes, it's very, very small in comparison.
They were shipping over Australian convicts to Australia while you guys were fighting your War of Independence.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
One of the convict ships got waylaid by you guys.
Yeah, actually, one of the convict ships was being sent from Britain. We did that's going to pop up in our fourth book. But as it was coming back to Australia to drop off those convicts, an American ship pulled them over, stole all of the convict stuff. They didn't have much stuff, and then were like, "And on your way." You know, so that's where we sort of fit in. Like being Matthew Soul, my last name comes from a relative who was an American convict, Holly?
French man sent to America, went back to Britain, ended up in Australia.
Yes. So, you know, that sort of puts, when we became federated, that was just after the American Civil War?
No.
This is what I'm asking you to help me. 1901. So we haven't even been a country for that long, just over 100 years, basically. So anyway, back to my... Sorry, I completely went all over the place there. Back to my story. Hope you've got a good editor. So back to the story. So I went down to the jail, to the Dubbo jail, and they've got a lot of like animatronics and sort of props that yell and scream and holler. So it's like you go into a dark room and you see this thing that doesn't look quite human screaming while it's rocking back and forth in a straitjacket. Immediately you're going to feel that. And I don't know necessarily whether that has to do with it being haunted or not. But then I've also visited Australia's most haunted destination, which is called the Monte Cristo House, which we accidentally called the Monte Carlo House, which is an Australian biscuit. And because we made that mistake, but corrected the mistake at the end of the episode, to this day, the emails that we still get about it's called the Monte Cristo House, Matthew. It's not the biscuit.
So I use that as like, you haven't listened to the entire episode, have you?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Yes, I have. It's in the last 20 seconds. Go back and have another listen.
But I did that tour from start to finish, and again, you know, I didn't feel any of it. You know, they say that a cynic is just a wounded optimist. I would love to have a paranormal encounter, but I can say to this day that any paranormal encounter that we have covered, I have been able to at least offer the alternative scientific explanation or debunk it a little bit. And I personally have never had a UFO encounter or an alien encounter or a ghost encounter. Twice I thought I did. Once when we were coming across what is known in Canberra as Lake George. It's quite a flat plain, and when it floods, it actually fills up and becomes a lake again. But during drought times, it's just a flat plain. We were driving across there, and I'm watching this amazing light pattern, and I could see the outline of what would be the Australian coast towards Bateman's Bay, and I'm watching this light bounce across, and I'm like, this is it, man. This is it. Your whole life you've been waiting for this, and it's happening. I'm watching the light bounce across the clouds, and I'm like, Holly, pull over. We've got to go. This is it. We're going to see something. We're going to record it. She's like, I'm pretty sure it's just a weather event. I'm like, Holly, not now. Aliens. So we pull over. And what was it, Holly?
Lightning.
It was just, what we were seeing was the edge of a storm, and we weren't seeing the lightning strikes. We were just seeing the initial strike. And that's why it looked like it was moving across.
The clouds.
So that's disappointing. So I was disappointed by that. And then one night I'm driving home, and I generally work overnight. So, you know, that's your 3 a.m., that's your 5 a.m. finishes. I'm driving along, and I look up, and I see this disc, right? It's bright. It's a cylinder. It was around, and I thought, oh, that's a little bit on the nose if this is actually an alien. And it's just bouncing around. I call Holly, and I'm like, holy shit, Holly, I think I'm seeing something. I genuinely think I'm seeing something. This is starting to freak me out a little bit. And then I find out that they're actually testing spotlights for the Lightfire Festival in Canberra. So both times I've been excited to see UFOs, and sadly I've never encountered one. And yeah, I've done some haunted locations, Sydney, Dubbo, and down in Junee, and I have to say at the moment, I haven't really had that encounter, nor have I felt any of that energy. Holly, have you? What about you? No, yeah, see?
My mum and my grandmother will swear by ghosts, but I have never felt one.
I can say the creepiest story that I ever heard, there was, where I was growing up in Tumut, there was a little township just on the hill called Batlow. Batlow's famous for its apple orchards, has some of the largest apple orchards in the country, and very, very famous the Batlow apple in our area. It gets exported over to England and it gets exported over to New Zealand. And my grandmother lived there for some time. She lived there with her brother. And she said that at 12 o'clock every night, the door would open. Right? It was a door that led out from the corridor, down the hallway, outside. She said that door would open every goddamn time. And no matter what, they even bolted it. And they said, like, they bolted it, they came out, door was open in the morning. And she said once they started looking into it, it turned out the previous residents of that home had hung himself in that doorway. You know, and that's why it always open. My grandparents used to talk about all sorts of strange stuff, and you know, they call them rods from heaven. These sort of weird electrical phenomenon would crash in Tumut all the time, UFOs all the time. So yeah, my sleepy little town, we got a lot of that sort of stuff. Just because people are bored. There's only 7,000 of us.
That's what
There's
it was.
only 3,500 of us.
Yeah, people get real bored.
Oh, yeah.
Do a lot of drugs, go camping. You see some
We
stuff.
just get drunk and fight,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then we'll hang out with the person the next day. Don't matter. But yeah, I don't know. I personally think a lot of the ones that are advertised as haunted locations, sorry, the Wi-Fi.
That's all good.
They never are, like, they don't, when you go to, like, I guess to me, and I wouldn't believe 99% of this stuff if I didn't have my own experiences, so I never expect anybody else to. Because it's just, I was a biologist, that's how I'm minded, and a lot of this stuff has no actual evidence. But I don't ever doubt anybody's story because I've had my own unbelievable stuff, so it's like, if I can have that, why can't you have this experience? Why can't, you know? But
Yeah,
if it's
'cause I've-
advertised... Sorry.
I've listened to your account of the Bigfoot that.
Oh yeah.
With some very scary encounter, which, as a little plug, when we do our episode, that's something I want to talk a little bit with you about is your encounter with the American Bigfoot. I think our listeners would be very interested in that. But unlike yourself, you know, we've never had that encounter. I think too, for people, you know, regardless of whether something is true or not, you experience what you experience. So if, for example, you happen to see an owl at the wrong angle in the middle of the moonlight when you're already scared because you're inside a forest and it looks like an alien, it doesn't lessen the experience that you think it was an alien or you got it confused for an owl. You're still absolutely terrified in that moment. You know, you're still seeing what you're seeing. And I think there's no need to belittle anyone. And I think that's something that does happen a lot, is that there's this urge to belittle people when they have interesting stories. At its worst, you're being told an interesting story that isn't quite true. At its most scariest, if you wanted to buy into it, it is a very scary story. The only time when you can ever laugh at people like that is when they have a series on the Discovery Channel. And that's, you know, that's generally the best time for it. When we do our live show that we've done a couple of times, one thing we love to talk about is the Australian Yowie, very much an equivalent to the American Bigfoot. And Hunting Bigfoot came over here to try and find a Yowie.
Monster Hunters.
Was it Monster Hunters?
Yeah.
We're not finding Bigfoot?
No, I think it was Monster Hunters.
It's ridiculous that
Hang on a second, I'll just check.
We know a lot of these guys.
Yep. So there was, Holly's going to look it up for us so we actually have the name. We're pretty sure someone was fucking about with them and yelling and hollering around them in the bush. They recorded it, and that one little 2 seconds of recording, that was their Yowie experience. And knowing Australians like we do, we've done this in our live show, and we've done it when we've done streams and things, and we've played that clip. And if you play that clip for an American audience, they will tell you, "Oh my God, they heard a Yowie." Right? You play that for an Australian audience, they'll be like, that was Dazza having a piss while he was having a few tinnies out in the bush taking the piss out of these poor American buggers.
It literally sounds like someone's over here going, yo!
Yeah.
Yo!
And because we know our areas pretty well, you see an American film crew coming in, you're going to go and funk with them.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's
I would.
Yeah.
I would.
Holly, did you find the name of which show that was?
Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot.
It was Finding Bigfoot. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now-
do you guys know them?
Yes.
We know
You
of
can
them.
you can
They
tell them
will-
it wasn't a Yowie.
Yeah, that's fine. We actually see them next month, the end of April.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, we hang out with those guys in a month.
Yep.
No, they'll tell you right off that 99% of the show is for TV.
It's a show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just did an interview recently with one of the producers of Australian Survivor. I don't want to say too much more than that because they have an NDA for obvious reasons. But TV is TV, and what you see is what you see. But
It's entertainment.
Yeah. If when you do speak to them, you can say, well, we talked to a couple of Australians and they apologise for Australians taking the piss out of you. And we're really sorry that we did that.
But we'll do it
They
again.
may have done. The producer may have already paid somebody to do that. I'm not joking. So, like, we talked to Cliff and Renee. That's two we really see a lot because we go to the same conferences. We're speakers at the same events that they are. So we got to know them pretty good over the last couple of years. But they'll tell you right up that 99% of the stuff on the show is for TV.
Yeah,
the only thing that's really real they do on the show is the eyewitnesses.
Yep.
When they physically talk to somebody, that's them getting an actual account from somebody. And then everything after that, is for TV.
Yep.
So if it's not, I'd have to look. I don't know that clip off the top of my head, but I'm going to guess it's not in the BFRO, which is the organization that Matt founded.
Beefro.
I'm going to...
Beefro. I know all about
Beefro,
your...
yeah.
I know you've also got UFO as well, which will have to change their name soon. The paranormal community in America loves their acronyms, and I love them too. They're cool little fun names. Beefro, Afro, UFRO.
Mufro.
Yeah, Mufro.
we got kicked out of the UFO community.
That's probably don't they if a couple of different UFO groups rock up on the same turf, they'll actually have it out, won't they?
Yes. They are, out of all of our paranormal groups here in the U.S., from first-hand experience, the Bigfoot community is probably the 99% of the easiest to get along with.
Yep.
And the UFO community is the worst.
That feels like it has more to do with your cryptids or your encounters, because aliens like to probe people, whereas the Bigfoot's just like a kind, cuddly little monster.
Get out of my way. I want to get probed first.
We have people stand out in the field. We just did. We did, what did we do for Patreon? Travis Walton.
The Travis Walton story.
So you interviewed Walton?
No, we didn't get to interview him. We're going to see him at a conference later in the year.
We just talked about his story.
Fire in the Sky is one of my favorite films. It sits in my Blu-ray collection.
I don't know if you guys have looked into the actual encounter. It's quite a bit different than the movie, but it's still really
I have,
good.
Yeah. The movie sets it up very much like a typical slap down on a table, weird implements go inside your eyeball, horrible little aliens running around being nasty. The actual experience, it's more along the lines of that sort of that shared pop culture that the UFO community has developed, where it was more likely that he was knocked down and he was injured, so the Venusians put him in the ship, and then they nursed him back, and then probably stole his semen, and then there was some greys running around.
He's in there, he's in there. Might as well grab it.
Yeah.
Look, my opinion is, you're somewhere new, you've met some nice people, have a party. That's
right.
You
lose some semen, it happens.
But
it happens all the time.
Saturday night in Ohio. It happens. But no, you're talking about people trying to get in line to get probes and stuff like that. Him and his brother often talked about if they ever seen a UFO, their goal was to get as under it as possible to be abducted.
Yep.
And they'd had this conversation openly in public several times. So it's like, there are people here, especially in the U.S., that will, the second lights show up in the sky, they'll be out there naked in the field running around like, come on.
Yep.
I'm already ready. I'm ready.
There's a t-shirt idea for you guys, is someone trying to lure a UFO. They're bending over in a cornfield and like, hey, come here. It's here. It's ready. I'm ready for you.
You don't even got to deal with it. I'll put the straps on myself.
They have a big billboard over the head that says, probe here.
Probe here.
You know, you're running at the UFO with your pants falling down. It's like, I'm ready. I've
They're
been
running
waiting.
backwards.
You know,
Now,
it's
Since we're on the
dear.
UFO topic, you guys have a UFO
Yes.
story for us, correct?
Yes, we do. So we've brought a UFO story to you guys, and the reason that we've done that today is because it actually ended up in a little bit of American pop culture. So there's an episode in season 11, I believe, of the X-Files where Fox Mulder is talking to Joel McHale's character, and Fox wants him to prove his UFO cred, and he discusses the Cahill incident. And it's not something that was very well known, at least outside of Australia, until that particular episode of the X-Files. The reason it's something that we've incorporated in our live show and we want to bring to you today is because it's one of those cases where I have a very difficult time debunking it. And that's why it scares me a little bit. And we also have a variant of monsters in Australia. When it comes to American UFOs, I've generally heard about, 3 different types of aliens. Your more popular aliens, your short greys, your tall greys, and your Venusians. Every now and again, you hear talk about a draconian, or you hear talk about some sort of praying mantis. Now, there are some very creative people. Even if it's all bullshit, it's an amazing little fun universe that has been collectively created. And I really dig that. So, at its most base, I think that's pretty cool. We don't have that. We have essentially one kind of alien encounter, which I find is very fascinating just because if you look at it from purely created myth, then our culture has informed how we've created our aliens. Your culture has informed the way you have your aliens. And if it's not myth, if it is true, then why are our aliens so radically different to yours?
Yeah.
And that's something that is also fascinating. So that's why today we thought we'd bring you the Cahill encounter. I'm going to shut up for a minute and actually allow Holly to introduce it, as she does a lot of the hard work on this sort of stuff.
Welcoming a baby is one of life's greatest gifts. Here at Stoka, we make the second greatest gift so every parent can enjoy their first. Curate a one-of-a-kind baby registry with award-winning products such as the Trip Trap High Chair, the unique Sleepy Oval Mini Crib, and iconic Explory Stroller. Our products are designed to grow alongside your family and can be used from birth, but also transform as your child grows and develops. Stoka products are not only beautiful, but also are built with safety and sustainability at the forefront, providing parents a peace of mind and support for their greatest gift, their baby. To learn more, visit Stoka.com. You can use promo code REGISTER with Stoka at checkout for a free cushion with any high chair purchase. That's STOKKE.com, promo code REGISTER with Stoka. Here we grow.
So the Cahill encounter happened early in the 90s. Kelly Cahill and her husband were driving back from their friend's house. They were in an area called the Dandenong Ranges, so we covered it in an episode called The Aliens of the Dandenongs because they weren't the first people to encounter aliens there.
Yeah, if you want to pronounce it correctly as well, it's not the Dandenong Ranges, it's the Dandenong Ranges. That's how you pronounce that properly. Holly, can I talk about the priest a little bit to set up that background there?
Can you remember his name?
What is his name? Can you remember his name?
Reverend B. Cozens.
Yes, so Cozens, they predates aircraft. So that's something that's very important.
He doesn't predate aircraft. He just predates mass flight. His encounter was in 1909.
Yes. So you don't have commercial airlines. You have some hot air balloons. The Wright brothers had already built their flying machine, but you don't have what we would consider commercial aircraft. There's no helicopters. There's no planes. There's barely even an Australian Air Force at this point. We haven't even been to war as a country. Oh, have we, Holly? When's World War One?
1914.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Just wanted to double check that before I start bullshitting my way through this. So we don't end up having, any sort of Air Force at this point that could be confused. Now, he describes very vividly seeing this strange line. And the reason we know about it is because he was so passionate about that story, he then went and told the local newspaper. And that's how we have an account of it. And then his account was then also replicated by other people who were living in the area at the time. But what's very interesting here is this is pre-UFO culture. This is not a time when there are a lot of aircraft in the sky. Now, could he have been seen an astrological event? Absolutely he could have. Because the one thing that you do see from a psychological standpoint when it does come to people who have seen these strange things is they're more open to belief, generally because they have already prescribed to an ideology. So in this case, we're talking about a priest. He already believed in the church. He already had a supernatural leaning. So those sort of people were found throughout all of our cases are more psychologically inclined to believe that these things are alien. The problem with ascribing it to a natural phenomenon is the fact the way it moves. It sort of seems controlled, you know. So that's where we start Dang Dong. That's why it is as infamous as it is, because we go all the way back to the early days of UFO encounters in Australia.
So Cozen's encounter took place in August, early August, between the 6th and the 10th of August. I didn't get an exact date, but that's as close as we could get. The Cahill encounter happened on August 8, 1993. So they're in
a bit of a gap.
They're in the same era of the year, basically, within the same week of the year. So Kelly and her husband were driving back from her friend's house. Kelly noticed something weird going on ahead. There was a light. It came down over the road in front of them. They drove towards it. They woke up. They were driving home. That's
all they remember. Right? They've seen a strange light. There are other cars on the road as well. That's going to be a little bit more important as we talk about this case. They see something and boom, they instantly lose time. Now, if you've followed any UFO encounters, any UFO abductions, the infamous losing of time, and that's where you, for whatever reason, you're at a solid point of consciousness, you awaken to it. Well, you don't even awaken, you just return to consciousness. 2 hours have gone, you don't remember anything about it. It's strange. They brush it off. They saw something weird in the sky. Lots of people do. They kept moving on.
Within a few weeks, Cahill experienced flashbacks to her night on the road. The memories seemed out of place with the agreed narrative between Andrew, her husband, and herself. These new memories would start to build what we now actually refer to as the Cahill encounter. It's not just the orange light, it is so much more. Cahill started in her noontime... Sorry, I'm actually reading this. Cut that bit out for me. Cahill stated in her new timeline that her husband had parked the car and approached the craft. At this time, the Cahills were only 10 to 15 minutes from home. 2 more cars parked near the Cahills, no doubt drawn to the site themselves. The occupants of the vehicles got out to get a closer look at the spacecraft. Cahill asserted that the ship had a magnetism about it, as though they were moving towards the craft, not of their own will, though one could conject that natural human curiosity could have played an equal part. They stood at the fence watching for a minute. Beings started to appear below the craft. They were about 7 feet tall and black in colour, a black like pure nothingness or void of colour, with piercing red eyes out of proportion to their heads.
Now, as far as I understand it, and through looking at various different UFO stories, there is no other alien encounter described this way. It's unique to us. So, a couple of things to look at here. Now, the tale that Holly is recounting is from our book, Weird Crap in Australia, Volume 1. One of the first things we decided to take a crack at was this particular story. We've done an episode on it as well. And that was just because, again, I'm a big fan of the X-Files. I'm like, they mentioned Australia. This is amazing. We've got to talk about it. It's like, Americans know we exist. It's wonderful. Yeah. So we decided, we're gonna break apart this story. Now, the thing that caught my attention here when she was describing what she saw, and for people who are skeptics, this is for you. What she's describing is very similar to the phenomena seen by people who suffer from sleep paralysis. So if we go back to the start of the tale, she described losing time. Now, could that be someone falling asleep, suffering from sleep paralysis, and then having the experience that she had? That's a possibility. And that's why one thing that we try and do on the show, very much like you guys do as well, and I really like that about your show, is that you do have to balance it a little bit. And I try not to kill the magic, but also give a few different counterpoints. The reason I think that there could be a possibility here of sleep paralysis is because the shadow people that people describe seeing is very, very similar to this. And if you're not aware of sleep paralysis, the basics of it is the human body is not built very well, regardless of what anyone tells you. It's prone to problems, and sleep paralysis is one of those. And what happens is, for whatever reason, the chemical process that is required to wake you up doesn't occur properly. Our body puts us to sleep. It paralyzes us, and that's really, really important, because if it doesn't paralyze us, you could end up having a dream where you're a ninja and you high kick your partner in the bed. Right out of the bed, they fall to the ground. It could be a horrible situation to be in. So your body paralyzes you and puts you to sleep for that specific reason.
However, we all know people who
So
don't
I didn't mean
actually
to kill you
do
with that joke. Yeah, everyone know. Yeah. Holly doesn't kick me in the bed though. But when I'll hop into bed, I think she's talking to me because I hear those weird little sort of half speech noises. The what, Holly? She speaks her own special language.
And Matthew doesn't lay still.
No,
I'm a ruler too.
You're a sleep ninja.
Yeah, sleep, exactly. So during the event of a sleep paralysis, what happens generally is the chemical blocks that stop you from moving about, they stay intact, but your conscious mind wakes up first. So you're going from a subconscious surreal state into a fully conscious state. Your body is still paralyzed, and part of what you're seeing in dreams and what you're seeing in reality start to blend together. So you get the perfect representation of your bedroom, but also that nasty, scary thing that was chasing you in your dream. Your Freddy Krueger comes with you. That is all due to chemical malfunctions. And a lot of the UFO encounters and alien encounters are being more attributed to that particular phenomenon, that chemical issue. There is a problem with this skepticism, and I'll let Holly continue.
There are 8 or 9 of these beings. They suddenly ran at the Cahills with immense speed, splitting into 2 groups. One group went for Cahill and her husband, and the other group rushed towards a second band of witnesses. I thought you were going to jump in there.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry. And guys, if you have any questions, just jump straight in, because we're happy to. Yeah.
I'm enjoying listening.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is where what Holly just said there about having those other witnesses, that's where the problem is when it comes to, is this a sleep paralysis story? So the man who investigated this whole thing was actually a notable Australian scientist. His name was Bill Chalker. Now, unfortunately for Bill, his career ends with a little particular case called the Hair of the Alien. I don't know if you know much about this case. Long story short, someone probably had a bit of a mental breakdown and assumed that 2 beautiful alien women were having sex with him. He woke up with a hair around
His manhood.
his manhood.
Yes. Tied,
Yes.
super tight.
Tied super tight.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I do know that one.
Yep. Health and safety alert for everyone. This can happen to men. If it does happen, make sure you remove it or go to the hospital. It can lead to an infection. It's a weird thing that happens more often than you think. Please, if you have a hair tied around your penis right now, go to the hospital. You don't want it falling off. So
Finish this episode first. Then go to the hospital.
No, listen
Go
to
to
it
the-
while you're waiting in the waiting room.
there you go. Yeah, that works. Got to get that
Here
listener.
in the U.S., you will be waiting for a while, so it's okay. Yeah, you got to
You know.
find to listen in the waiting room.
How did you know to come to the hospital? Well, I was listening to this podcast and they described exactly what's going on with me right now. So, with
I looked down and it made sense.
yeah. So, unfortunately for Bill Chalker, and we see this a lot in the UFO community, once they get they get desperate for the conclusive story. You know, the story that proves it. if you dedicate 25 years of your life and you're not a podcaster like we are telling fun stories, it becomes I would imagine the psychological burden is immense. And so Bill's like, so we grabbed that hair, so we grabbed that pubic hair, and we did a DNA analysis, and it's very unique. And they're like, oh my God, is this like alien DNA or what did you find, Bill? What did you find? Well, turns out that the hair was a hybrid of Asian genealogy and Caucasian genealogy. Okay, Bill, why is that? So that
but only 0.2% of the population could possibly have
that DNA, which is fine.
Until
but when
you realize that that's like 3 million people, 4 million people in the world.
Yeah,
Millions of people.
2% of 7 billion is a big number. And so Bill was determined this is what is going to be the thing. And I think he just devoted so many resources to it. We have that book in our collection, which is called The Hair of the Alien. It's a fun read. We've done episodes on it. And it killed his career. But before that, Bill, in my opinion, never became the crazy ufologist. He did the work. And during this particular case, his team went down, they interviewed Cahill. They managed to keep her separate from the other witnesses as far as they tell us. So you can't 100% remove the possibility that this is all a hoax, this is a con, that these people were all working together. I can't discount that possibility. It is a possibility. But let's say, for instance, that what Bill is telling us is the truth before he went crazy. And I shouldn't say he went crazy. He just doesn't talk to anyone anymore, and he doesn't do interviews, and he hasn't written a book since Hair of the Alien. So, and he hasn't worked in academia for a long time. It was not a great case to hang his hat on. So Bill's team manages to interview the other witnesses to the Cahill encounter separately. And that's extremely important because keeping them all separate, they had no contact with each other. The only time these other witnesses discovered that they were a part of the Cahill encounter was when she did her book tour and started going on all the current affair programs. That's how they worked. Everyone started putting all the dots together. So you've got 3 cars, 5 independent witnesses. 2 of the people can't remember anything. The other 3 people can, and they're all being verified. So going back to my earlier skepticism when it comes to sleep paralysis, that starts to make the waters very murky for that particular explanation.
So the second car actually had 3 people in it, which makes it 6 witnesses, not 5, Matthew.
See, I thought that there was one that had 2 people in it, so I was wrong about that.
2 was Cahill and Andrew.
Yep.
3 was Jane, Glenda, and Bill, and then the last car had 1 person in it, and he never gave his name.
His name was Mr. No Name.
Sure, why not? So when this,
sorry,
go ahead. Yeah, please. If you got questions
so
about
far, it gives some Betty and Barney Hill vibes. It gives some Rendlesham Forest vibes, where they were attracted like a moth to the bug zapper.
Mm. It's really like shadowy people too, and then like the red eyes is pretty interesting.
The red eyes, and any time red eyes pop up, it always personally it leans towards a bad place.
It pushes it more towards the idea of a cryptid as opposed to an alien. But I mean, one of the theories that keeps being put out there, and I think has some sort of credit, is what if all of this phenomena, whether it's Bigfoot or aliens or anything, what if we're actually seeing just some sort of dimensional incursion? Right now scientists are working very hard to prove the multiverse theory. They believe that there is some mathematical theorem out there that they've put together, some equations that do suggest that our universe is home to a multiverse, and there are many multiverses out there. Then what we're actually seeing is perhaps a dimensional bleed or some sort of energy pocket that just pops into existence and pops out. So if I go out and see an encounter based on my upbringing and being an Australian, maybe I see this red-eyed pure black void alien, whereas you guys could see Bigfoot while we're seeing the exact same phenomena at the same time. You know, what we don't know is extraordinary. We know very, very little about our own world. There could even be an unknown element that is terrestrial, that is Earth-like, that affects us psychologically. We already have those things out in the world. A lot of hauntings are being disproven by infrasound, which does crazy things. You know, so while you could actually just be seeing some sort of a psychic reaction or, you know, a physiological reaction to something that is actually very earthly, or it could be a multi-dimensional pocket bleed, or as I like to end every episode, or it could have been aliens. You know, why not?
There could even be that possibility where there's a multiverse that bleeds into ours, where Zack Snyder movies are actually good.
Oh, gosh.
But see, the problem is then that every other movie would be shit, so every other director would be crap in that universe.
It just lowers the standards of everybody else. Just raise his.
Yeah. So it's like, here's the best. Batman vs. Superman is still good, but it's like, you know, you'd watch a Steven Spielberg movie and it'd look like an asylum film. So, like, you know, you gotta be careful. It's like when Homer goes into that alternate reality in The Simpsons and everything is perfect, except no one's heard of donuts. He freaks out, runs away, and then it starts raining donuts. Like, you have to be very, very careful with this sort of stuff. So, yeah, they gather up these independent witnesses. They all start to corroborate the same story. And like you said, it's got that Betty and Barney Hill vibe. And just like Barney Hill, there's also a physical element as well, which I think is where Holly's up to. And I apologize if not Holly.
Kelly and Andrew were knocked to the ground. They were unconscious. When they next woke up, they were in the car. A couple of days later, Kelly and a couple of the witnesses, Jill and Glenda, realized that they had some triangular marks on their thighs or their stomachs.
Yeah, so if you are not aware of UFOs and what they sometimes do, we made a bit of a joke about this, but in the case of Betty and Barney Hill, Barney was mechanically raped. I mean, let's just call it what it is.
There's no other way to put it.
There really isn't.
What happened?
Yeah, and he said that. He ended up with marks on his genitalia. He was very sickly for the rest of his life, and he had marks indicating some weird insertions and things along those lines. These women started experiencing the same thing, and that also had effects on their reproductive health as well, didn't it, Holly?
Yeah, nothing very specific that I want to go into here, but just throwing the cycles out.
Are we PG?
No, I just don't like talking about it. No, with a group of boys. Oh, no.
So, yeah, they had issues, with regularity on their menstrual cycles, and that prompted both of them to go to the hospital.
And that's the story of Kelly Cahill.
So, yeah. So, those are the basics of it. And then once the witnesses were kept separate for nearly the entirety of this story becoming famous. Cahill is not her real name. I don't think we ever found her real name. Not that we would want to. You know, she created a pseudonym in order to protect her privacy.
And then went face out on national TV.
Yeah, that's the problem with Cahill. Is like she didn't want us to know her real name, but then she also did like every single news program that she could, making her an instantly recognizable figure and eventually being mentioned on the X-Files. So I don't know how effective that plan was.
Right.
But, you know, that is probably the one UFO encounter that does keep me up. We've looked at a lot of different encounters, and honestly, I can find pretty comfortable explanations for most of them. Yeah. A lot of them are hoaxes, and, you know, regardless of what MUFO wants to think, because we have MUFO here as well.
We have Alpha One.
Well, they're basically the same thing, just the Australian version. They want to believe that every single encounter is absolutely 100% true, and it's not. You know, there are cases where individuals have phone records where there was a case towards Queensland, I want to say, Holly, that we covered.
Are you talking about the Gundia Mackay incident?
Yeah. And they had phone calls between where the person was abducted from and dropped off at in the days preceding to her being discovered.
But she only vanished 2 hours before being discovered.
Supposedly. You know, so it's like every single UFO organization wants to be like, yes, these are absolutely real. This is absolutely true. But obviously some hoaxes are just hoaxes. You know, the guys who did the crop circles in the UK have been like, we were bored and it was us. You know, we all went out and we did a little bit of fucking about and we had a tinny and it was fucking wonderful. And they all went out and did that, you know, and then they went to the media and said, hey, it was us. And then the media's like, well, prove it. And they're like, okay. And they did a crop circle in front of them, showing them the equipment that they used. And it was very, very clear that these guys did it. And to this day, people still cite crop circles as absolute infallible evidence of an alien visitation. And it's just not possible. And I think that goes back to what eventually happened to Bill Chalker. You want something so bad that you're willing to make everything fit together. And I think you have to be careful of that.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I loved about your show when you were talking about going out and looking for Bigfoots, and I'd highly recommend everyone, if you haven't listened to those episodes of Cryptids of the Corn, you should go back and listen to them. They're fantastic. But one thing that stuck out at me that you said, not every single broken limb is a Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that resonated with me because not every alien encounter is real, you know.
Right.
You have your Shreevers of the world who it seems real. You know, Communion has a lot of these elements to me that are like, why the fuck would you make all of this up? And Cahill has
a weird one.
Yeah, we recently watched Communion the movie. How did you go with that, Holly?
I kept having panic attacks.
When the little alien pops its head around the corner, has to be one of the most disturbing things I've seen in an alien film. For whatever reason, viscerally, it just hits you in the guts. That
you know, people freak out when they see it. You know, even if you don't have an alien experience or quote unquote alien experience, it's one of those movies that's really powerful.
Yeah, it is, and it makes me wonder, why do people respond to that iconography in that way? You know, what is it about the way that particular film looks and those aliens are represented? What is it that makes you feel viscerally scared and afraid? There's a lot of stuff that we don't understand, I think, about biologically induced psychology. You know, ducks migrate because that's what they've always done. You know, they have this biological memory of how to cross from one place to the other.
Colloquially, it's known as DNA memory.
DNA, yeah, exactly. So, you know, what is it about watching a film like Communion that upsets you to your core? And I think those sort of questions are very interesting. When you look at human evolution, the idea of, you know, the possibility of not just 2 or 3 human species, but maybe 7 or 10 different human species. What did that planet look like? How did we react with those things? What if there were humanoids that were very, very different to us that informed our DNA memory of what an alien looks like? Yep. You know, or it's like the film Paul. I love that because, you know, they're like, hey, man, you look exactly like the aliens from the comics. And he's like, of course, because this has been planted into your pop culture so that when you actually see us, you're not going to freak out.
Right.
You know. So, yeah.
2 things for that is that I just seen it. I'm big in paleontology and stuff like that, but 22 species of human at one time existed at the planet together.
Yeah.
22 species. And then Uncanny Valley, we talk about that a lot, that we have this genetic knowledge or this genetic fear of something that looks human but it's not quite right.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's what it's hitting on, like you're saying, that, you know, the grays look just enough-ish human to be like, okay, that's not right. You know, it's freaky.
Shoot it.
There's a psychological survival instinct when it comes to the Uncanny Valley. That's another thing I like too, is when you're like, if we find Bigfoot, we shouldn't shoot it. I'm like, I like that opinion very much. And then other Bigfoot hunters are like, no, we got to kill it. We got to absolutely kill it.
That's a hard line here in the U.S.
Yeah. Because look, I've said some things about the Zabruta film on our podcast, and I've gotten a lot of hate mail over that one, but it really does look to me like a dude in a suit.
Yeah, I mean, you will. I mean, it's just how it is. It's gonna.
Yeah, they're very passionate.
Yes, extremely. I mean, we go to festivals and talk. One of our big Bigfoot festivals we go to in 2 months has 11 or 12,000 people that go in one day.
Yep.
So our biggest one's Mothman Festival, which we're talking about on your show. Which Mothman Festival this year, they don't even know how many people it had. Yeah, it's between 35,000 and 40,000.
I remember watching some news footage on that, and they're like, I don't know if this town really needs to erect a Mothman statue. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mothman supports your entire economy. Put up more Mothman statues.
If you guys ever come to Ohio or the U.S., we will take you there. We'll give you the full tour.
That would be
it is
amazing.
a little no-name town.
Yep.
And it's great. Jeff Wimsley, so when we come on your guys' show, we're going to use some of his stories. I don't know if you guys know who that is directly. He's the owner of the Mothman Museum.
Right. I think I've read quotes from him. That name sounds
I'm sure you
familiar.
have. You're a big Mothman fan, so I'm sure you have.
I am.
But yeah, because he's the one he's local. He was a kid when it was happening, so he knew everybody that had encounters. So even if they don't have the names attached, he has the locations and the people's encounters that he was able to get. Anybody at home, I suggest if you want a good Mothman book with those accounts, get any of Jeff's stuff. He has like 3 or 4 books. They're great. Behind the Red Eyes is the one that's sitting right here. But yeah, the Bigfoot community is very passionate.
Yeah. Yes. I got some very angry emails concerning my opinion on the Zapruder film, which I politely responded to all of them. It's okay to disagree too. I think we. Unfortunately, we live in probably one of the most polarized times that we've ever lived in. And it's okay to disagree with someone and finish your beer and finish your meal with them and still be buddies when you walk out the door. When Holly and I disagree with things on the podcast, one of the things I like to point out at the end of the disagreement is to say, see, we can disagree. We don't always have to agree on anything, and we can still walk away and be friends.
I mean, he says that, but he's down to 3 fingers now.
Well, look, the worst part is she makes me eat them afterwards. It's not very nice. It's some people
gotta do.
Hey, they say that I'm in an abusive relationship. I don't think it's that abusive, but I am missing most of the digits on my hand. But yeah, the other thing about like the alien experience as well that I find fascinating here in Australia is that we don't have the Men in Black element, which is something we're definitely going to discuss with Mothman. We don't have the Men in Black element here, and I almost
did, actually when we did
but that
Gundy and Mackay incident,
hoax.
There was an MIB element, but other than that, no. The
problem is that particular story as well, they found a ton of UFO magazines and literature at their home. That's. And like going back to the Travis Walton experience that you mentioned earlier as well, that is one of the things that immediately raises alarm bells with me when discussing his case, is that him and his brother loved UFOs. They wanted, they had a UFO battle plan. When this thing arrives, we need to do this and we need to make it all happen. But again, with the Walton experience as well, though, how the hell did he wind up where he did by himself when everyone else was accounted for and he was dehydrated and he was very sickly? So it's, and that's exactly with Cahill. There are elements where I can go, okay, well, with this case, it could have been a combination of sleep paralysis and someone could be lying, right? They could have cooperated.
It's not lying, it's embellishing.
Maybe Bill Chalker wasn't being honest when he said that they were all kept as separate as they were. But I can never the information that could blow the whole thing wide open just doesn't exist. And I think considering how popular Cahill was, if any of the people who were there that night wanted to discredit her, then they had more than enough opportunity to do it. It could also be the case of like maybe it was a hoax and they definitely didn't want to be involved. Telling anyone that you've seen a UFO or that you've had an encounter, it's going to ruin your life. There is no money to be made. Yeah. You're going to be derided. You're going to have, you may lose your career. You will be examined not only by the the public, but by UFO enthusiasts, and even in some cases, the government is going to knock on the door and say, I need you to explain this UAP that you saw because it happened to be close to an airfield base, and maybe you've seen something that you shouldn't have, so we need to find out. No one comes out of a UFO encounter in a good light. And, Cahill was, but again, to the skeptic side of it, Cahill may have been aware of that, and that's why she created a fake name. Mm-hmm. Maybe she was aware that maybe she wouldn't make as much money off this and that it would come back to bite her on the ass later on in life. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, people have that big misconception that everybody's doing this for money. You gotta think, like, Travis Walton... Oh, I probably cut out again. Sorry. So, like, Travis Walton, everybody's got this big misconception that they made tons of money. And he still talks, but most of these conferences pay, like, $500 plus your hotel.
Yep.
And then you sell up $200 in books.
Yeah, you're not making too much
and
money.
You do that twice a month.
Yep. It's exactly what we do too, yeah.
And then he has people camping out in his yard and people screaming at him and throwing stuff at him. It doesn't seem like a good trade-off to me. And that's the big, he's one of the big ones here.
Mm-hmm. We're waiting for people to camp out the front of our house and start yelling at us like, that's a highlight.
One of the funniest things to speak to that, the funniest things that ever happened to us is Holly one day thought I was talking to her, but I was still asleep after a night shift. She'd gone downstairs and she was positive someone was talking to her, and she thought it was me, and she's looking around. Turns out our bottom stairs neighbor was listening to our podcast. And that's how she thought she heard my name, which I found quite funny. But yeah, look, if you look at the rest of the people who are involved in the Walton encounter, they had horrible existences afterwards.
Yes.
Except for the one guy who married Walton's sister. He had a good and happy marriage. But, there was some guy, one of the witnesses is like,
one out of 6.
Yeah, I can't be in the forest. He talks about how camping terrifies him. He had to move to New Mexico, I think it was, right?
Yeah, moved to the middle of the desert.
Yeah, because he just couldn't be around the forest anymore. And that speaks volumes to what happens to these people. They're not treated very nicely. And I think it's a bit of a shame because there's definitely something going on. There is an answer to be had. And, if people are treated constantly like they're having mental illness, well, even if it is all mental illness, we need to investigate that as well. Why are people having collective hallucinations? What is causing that? Is it some sort of biological thing in the air? Is it some sort of gas that we don't know about? I think that there's definitely enough out there to ask the questions. And I mean, the American military at the moment, they think there's enough out there to answer, to ask some of those questions. Just recently... Well, it's interesting with the UAP stuff that the guys who are writing about that for the New York Times, I listened to a podcast. I can't even remember the name of it now. It's a movie review podcast, but they're friends with one of the writers. And one of those writers said, "This story is going to change the fucking world." And it was the Tic Tac video, and the Tic Tac video comes out and it changes nothing.
Yeah,
nobody cares.
Nobody.
And I was watching this video, and I said to Holly, I'm like, this is legitimate. And I said that you could be looking at two possibilities here. You could be seeing drone tech being tried out. If you're Lockheed Martin and you've got a brand new weapon, who are you going to test it out on first? You're going to test it out on the best of the best, right? If you've already got a fighter jet out there of a certain capability, well, you've just created this amazing supersonic drone. You're going to send that little Tic Tac out there to test it against your own equipment before you deploy it overseas. That is a very realistic possible explanation for that video.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is the people who are in those cockpits are scared, and they're Navy, Air Force, like they know. They're designed, their psychology is broken so that they can't be afraid of situations. They're meant to keep their cool. That is what they're trained to do. So when they're like, man, I don't know what this is and I don't understand how it's flying. People also forget if you're up in a jet, you have to have an advanced mathematics degree. You have to understand the basic concepts of propulsion and movement and speed in an aircraft. And when they turn around and say, I don't understand what this is, that is definitely something to start asking questions about, unless it's solar panels attached to balloons. That's pretty earthy.
Right. Yeah.
But speaking to that, as far as the U.S.'s kind of the view for it, for when the Tic Tac officially became public, I kind of felt, first off, we don't nobody here in the U.S. really cares for our government too much.
Yeah, anyone that's paying attention.
It's the same everywhere these days. It's like, fuck those rich fucking people. Fuck them right off.
They need to wear NASCAR jackets so you know who's sponsoring them.
Yeah, exactly right.
But no, it's stuff we've already been seeing. The public's already been seeing forever. So for them to finally come out and say it just kind of was underwhelming. Like, yeah, we know. Yeah, we know there's weird stuff in the sky. We know that it's probably you guys or it's probably something else. We're not buying into this. We don't, just because you're 40 or 50 years late to the game coming public with it, we don't care. When we've interviewed people that have seen this stuff, and I think that's why, partially, and then, the world was ending when it came out too, but I think that's why the U.S. we didn't care. I mean, it was neat, but it's like, even in our circles, nobody cared.
Right, yeah.
It's like, everybody knows. Everybody knows that these things are...
Thanks for telling us something we already know.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you hit the nail on the head there too when you're talking about this being released during COVID. It is if you don't want a lot of attention on it, it is kind of the perfect time to release that sort of information out into the world. People are worried, oh shit, I've just lost my job, I have to stay at home. Grandmother is dead because she caught COVID, and now we have all these bills to cover that we can't. The last thing on your mind is whether there's some sort of alien incursion on the planet, or whether there are UFOs out there. I think it is interesting, though, in the respect of we have so much more surveillance out there. Everyone has a smartphone and things like that. And I think in some cases, at least having a military aircraft with military tech see something like that, I think it does at least give a little bit of validation to some people, because they're like, well, look, you can say a lot of things about a camera that is from the 90s that you had a roll of film attached to. You can definitely talk a lot about that, but it's a little bit harder to say that this thing isn't real when it is military technology recording it. And then obviously the subsequent videos that have come out as well, I find are quite interesting. So, we seem to sort of go through this period of non-disclosure, disclosure, non-disclosure, disclosure.
Right.
Talk about it, make it public, everyone knows about it, and then it will not shock me that if in maybe 5 or 6 years someone comes out and dismisses it as well. And I mean, maybe at the end of the day, this is just, again, a psychological testing of the public. Let's see what people do when we present them with an idea. Does it freak them out? Do they gather up? What is the behavioral model? And maybe they didn't they either got the reaction that they wanted, or maybe that they didn't. And maybe they took down a note and that will be published in a psychological journal somewhere.
Yeah. It's hard saying, and the media itself, I mean, now we have television and things like that to really spread messages or ideas. But before that, I mean, it was, probably newspaper was probably the most primary form of media that we had, spreads at least a national story around.
I mean, we literally have 3 books over there that's all about the stuff that was in older newspapers.
And I was going to say, as far as them disclosing things now, I mean, the newspapers had countless stories of UFOs or things like that, just in our country alone. That dates back, to the mid-1800s, just things like this. And now, they put it on TV and they're, well, this stuff's real now, guys. It's like, this stuff has been around for anybody that's paying attention or has any interest in it at all. It's already been there. So what they showed us, is nothing really special at all for anyone in this community.
I mean, one of the first Tic Tacs was in the 1930s in Italy. An actual one of these real big Tic Tac shaped UFOs. So it's over almost 100 years ago is what, so.
It's old news.
Something Matt said that I really agree with is that the pilot had no idea what was going on. A fighter pilot.
Right.
Now, most of the time he's comfortable flying 650 miles per hour, and this thing's running circles around him. How freaky would that be? the guy's taken. I can't remember. He had a very extensive military record with active dog fights and stuff like that. He'd been engaged in. So it's like you're saying, Matt. It's nothing. He's not anybody. He's not a crackpot. He's a toughened, hardened man. That this thing is literally freaking him out, running circles around him. And something we covered with it is it only showed up on short-term radar, not long-term radar. And so organics, we are big proponents in the organic UFO angle that they're actually creatures from the upper atmosphere.
You'd love Nope, I would imagine.
Yep, we've done reviews on it and stuff, but
Nope.
it's these. So whales do that. Most people whales are big animals, but they don't show up on long-range radar. They only show up on short-range or sonar. Sorry, but it seems to do the same thing, and it just was playing with this fighter pilot. And then when it got bored, it took off at an insane speeds.
Yep.
This guy's flying 600 miles an hour, and it just whoop
Gone.
Yep.
Like that would freak anybody out to me.
And we have a similar phenomena here in Australia. We call it the Min lights, which Holly can talk about.
Oh, you want me to talk now?
Sorry, I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry. This is what happens. I'm the talker. Holly's the researcher.
The Min lights are a light phenomenon. They're basically glowing balls of light that will skip around like a will-o'-the-wisp. The only difference is the First Nations people associated it with happy times, not death and gloom like a will-o'-the-wisp is. They're usually seen on the horizon. They'll be up, they'll be down, they'll be flying around, changing colours. But if you manage to catch one, you'll be never seen again.
Yep. I'd like to point something out too about mine and Holly's dynamic. This always happens in interviews as well, because I'm a talkie guy, and Holly's the book girl.
Normally I can make gestures at him, but he's clearly not watching his screen.
I'll see. Well, I could, but the problem is your webcam is all dodgy, and Holly and I don't know if you guys can see it, but we're at the same desk, but this is what we're separated by. This nice big sound wall. So I can't actually see her. So I should. And of course you'll edit, I imagine, a lot of this rambling shit out. But
you'll be surprised.
One thing though, Holly, that you can talk about, I think that, and it was something that you just brought up there, is like all of this information has been out there for some time. We've built our entire podcast on this idea. That information is out there, people are just losing stories. And Holly is amazing at collating those. Yeah. It's like, Holly, what's the process of finding this stuff?
I find a vague mention of it in either a different news report or someone will vaguely mention it on a forum. And then I start digging. I will go through our national newspaper archives. I will go through the back end of Google searches. I will look through YouTube. Anywhere and everything I can get to. Sometimes I'll even go to the National Library and actually look through their physical books, which is very hard to do during COVID, but has been done previous to that, until I can work out how to fill an hour of us rambling about it.
I mean, we even have books, all of Bill Chalker's books that we've slowly accumulated over time. Friends of ours will go hunting in op shops to find old newspaper books.
I have 3 versions of the same book from 3 different decades.
Yeah, and all of the... So it's like, what all I feel like a lot of us are doing is we're just... It's almost like archaeology. You're just rediscovering this lost mythology, this lost information, and then you're bringing it back out there.
My idea with this podcast is that politicians will do anything they can to warp history to their own agenda. There's nothing you can do to stop it except to stand up and tell the stories.
Yep.
So you have to dig through the past, you have to drag out the things that besmirch the Anzacs, like the Liverpool riots, or the alien encounters that happened on naval bases around Australia, or the time that the Japanese bombed Sydney Harbour. All those kind of things that tend to get either pushed to the wayside or just shoved under the carpet completely have to be told so that we actually understand who we are and where we came from.
100%. Like when Holly just mentioned there, the Anzacs, that's the Australian and New Zealand Fighting Corps, Army Corps. Thank you, Holly. Sorry. It's nearly midnight. I'm losing my marbles. During their training before World War One,
it was 1916. It was during World War One. They were all being trained up to go for marches across Europe, and they decided they don't want to march for an extra half hour a day. So they were going to take a 2-day march through the centre of Sydney, looting every pub they saw, throwing stuff at every civilian they saw, and eventually getting into a shooting fight with police.
The bullet holes are still in the train station to this very day. Now, that's telling that story is not applicable to the mythologizing of the Australian Armed Forces.
It doesn't fit the exact, so you have to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's like, while all soldiers are amazing for the sacrifice and for going out and protecting us,
some are right bastards.
And they're also human as well. And I would prefer to read about a story of a bunch of soldiers who didn't want to march around in a square all day, going out, raiding pubs, getting drunk, and then having a shootout at the end of the day. That seems more Australian to me than these people are just, these untouchable heroes.
Australians marched on Parliament House in 1996. The Prime Minister at the time turned around and said it's an un-Australian thing to do. Like, Australians don't have a history of political organising and doing this kind of thing. And in the episode that did, I mentioned 20 other points that we've covered, plus 4 that we haven't, where we've done that exact thing.
Yeah. I think the people in charge, between government, media, would love to tell you how your community functions.
Yes.
They'd like to tell you who you are, who your people are, and they don't know, or they're warping it to suit an agenda.
Well, they've got their own history they're throwing on it.
Yeah, it's like we often uncover these amazing stories of people being very human and very relatable, and if they don't fit in with this sort of narrative that's pushed out there a lot, it's often forgotten. Before I continue on too much further, what timeline are you guys looking here?
What are we at, an hour and a half now?
I think so, yeah. I didn't want to push it too much longer on you.
Almost 2. So let's maybe wrap it up, because we still got to do one for you guys, right?
Yep, that sounds good. Then we can have a very quick break, and I'm going to make myself another coffee if that's okay.
That's fine. We're going to grab one too in the kitchen.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, I'll throw back to you, and then we can wrap your side of it up if you like.
That sounds good.
Cool.
But yeah, we agree with everything you guys said. It's the same thing in the U.S. Literally, our governor is so out of touch.
Yeah, it's not even. It's ridiculous. Anyone that's paying attention knows how ridiculous it is.
Ohio's a very unique state, and our governor doesn't understand anything about the state. Literally, that's why during COVID, they tried to
take him out back and shoot him in the head, probably
several times.
Yeah,
but he's very slippery.
I think they all are these days. We get so much American news. It's kind of fascinating. When it goes to you guys, I don't know if you hear about us a lot, but we get so much stuff now. And I listen to a podcast, Abe Lincoln's Top Hat, and I've learned so much about the American political system over the last couple of years. And we just recently had an election which may have countered a very sort of American system that was coming in as well, where we could have seen that too. But yeah, no, totally agree.
Well, this has been an awesome episode. Once again, you guys are one of my favorites, one of the ones I listen to every week.
Thank you so much.
And it's been an honor having you guys on. So if you could, real quick, go back through your shout-outs, your Patreon. I don't know what Mastodon is, but you got to keep shouting out, so shout that out. Do whatever you got to do.
So,
I mean, at this point, I could do Matthew's spiel myself. Like, I don't even need him here to do it.
You could. So the basic spiel is, if you'd like to find us on the social medias, we're on nearly all of them. So Facebook and Twitter obviously being the main two. Twitter, we are at Weird Crap in Oz, AUS. Mastodon and Hive are sort of their attempts at different Twitter things. I'm always worried I'm going to get banned off Twitter because I can't shut my mouth and I like shit-stirring Elon Musk because I think it's funny. But he kind of runs Twitter, so maybe one day he'll get a bit upset about my tweet where I'm like, hey, you're a billionaire. Maybe just shut up and go do something instead of being on Twitter all fucking day. Jesus Christ. So maybe one day I'm going to get banned off Twitter. So we also have Hive and Mastodon in case I run my mouth and we get banned.
We also have our own subreddit, so r/weirdcrapinoz podcast. Oz is AUS, so come over and have a chat with us whenever you want.
Yep.
Holly,
you can.
Will you re-say that, Holly? Sorry.
The whole thing.
The Reddit part. Yep.
So the sub that we moderate that we have is Weird Crap in Oz podcast with Oz as AUS. So
Yes.
come over and chat.
If ever we say Oz, it's always AUS, not OZ. So not Wizard of Oz, AUS. So yeah, you can find us on that. Occasionally I'm on Twitch. I'm not a streamer, so we only do it very sparingly. But if you do follow us there, you'll be alerted when that pops up. All of the Twitch streams end up on YouTube as well, and I'm just playing whatever particular game that I happen to be enjoying that day. When it comes to the podcast, you can find it. If you're listening to this right now, chances are we're on that app. So we're on it's on the same. We're on all the podcatching apps. And if you would like to check out some of our stuff in written form, maybe you enjoy that, you can grab a physical copy of our book series, We Crap in Australia, Volume 1, 2, and 3 are available from lulu.com. That's LULU.com. They're a great company because what they do is they actually tap your local printers. So if you're living in the US, they're going to tap a local printer to print the book on demand for you, as opposed to you having to ship it from anywhere, which I think it's really a valuable way to get your books out there.
Good
So
for the environment and good for the wallet.
exactly. Yeah, they're not doing mass pulping to make mass books. It's just print on demand, and they'll tap a local printer who actually needs the work to print those books for you. And of course, you can grab it on Kindle from Amazon, and I think it's in the Amazon library as well, Holly, so you don't even have to buy it.
Kindle Unlimited, yeah.
Yeah, Kindle Unlimited, so you can grab that as well. So those are all the different things that that you can find Weird Crap in Australia on.
Just Google it, and then whatever platform you want will be there.
I put all the links below anyways for everybody at home. So
Cool.
it'll be nice highlighted links.
Yeah, we do too many projects.
But no, it's just easiest. So if people, everybody at home, if you get their books, go listen, leave them reviews. All the links will be below for that.
5-star reviews.
5-star reviews only. We don't read.
No refunds.
Before we end it, you know how we end it, but I want to keep your guys' tradition too. So, Holly, what are the last words?
We have a lot of books going on this year, and I'm writing 4 at the same time. I don't know how I'm going to keep going with this podcast. Matthew's going to have to pick up the slack. Yeah!
Yay! More writing. I do have a gift for you though. I think I can make this work. So you like the impressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do my best Steve Irwin for you.
Shit.
Oh yes.
Right? So what would you have loved to hear Steve Irwin say?
Oh, crikey, look at that stunner
Isn't
over
she a
there.
beauty?
Ain't she a beaut?
He always
Ain't she a
screamed
beauty?
that.
All right, everybody. So I've gone down to the bush and I found this beautiful brown snake. She is absolutely beautiful. What a beautiful girl. Absolute beautiful example. I absolutely love her to bits. And if you look after the environment like I know you will, you're going to make me, Steve, very happy.
That's awesome.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Yes.
It tickled me. Thank you guys again. So you know how we like to end it? We're going to count down from 3. We're all going to scream bye. The outro will play.
Sounds good.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Cryptids of the Corn podcast.
Please share with a friend you think would like us. It's the best way to help our show grow.
Leave a comment, rate us, a 5-star review, and remember, there is always extra content on Patreon/CryptidsOfTheCorn.com.
And don't forget, stay magical.